I think that I have done in 2021. So if you have not seen any of my messages that I've been posting on social medias, I hope you had a really as good a Christmas as you could possibly have had in the circumstances, in the global circumstances going on right now. And also I hope you had a good new year as well. This video is going to be about the British royal family year in review. I've made some notes of some points that I want to make. We're going to tackle it kind of royal by royal almost. So we'll get to that in a moment. Of course, this is a live chat. I'm doing it in the live chat format. So I will be stopping to read and answer as many viewer comments and questions as I possibly can. Hopefully people will be getting the notifications and people will be dropping in. I can see some people dropping in already. So without further ado, let's get into this video. Do excuse the glare on the glasses. I do need them to read. So, the Royal Year in Review 2020. I think we should start with the top. We need to start with the Queen. So, think about not all of last year was taken up and consumed by the pandemic. Way back in February when the Queen returned to royal duty. By the way, a little bit of conversation about Christmas decorations. So lots of people are very 50-50, so, especially right now with all the pandemic and also being winter here in the UK. Some people are leaving them up. Some people have already taken them down straight after Christmas. What does the Queen do? Well, the Queen obviously usually, not this year, but usually stays at Sandringham over Christmas and doesn't return until after a session day in February. The Queen leaves her Christmas decorations up until she leaves Sandringham. So the Queen's decorations stay up until February. So normally, like I say, the Queen does not return to royal duties until after a session day. So in February of last year, when things were still normal, the Queen made one of her first engagements of the year was when she visited MI5 headquarters. So that's just kind of, so we kind of saw these visuals of the Queen going about normal work. Of course, compare and contrast that to later in the year where everything was video calls. In March, of course, the first lockdown, national lockdown here in the UK was announced. Schools shut, everything shut, and for the royals, that meant that in-person engagements stopped. There had to be a new way of doing things. The royals turned to video calls. We saw Prince Charles, the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge, the Queen, all taking, Princess Anne, Sophie and Edward, the Wessexes, all taking to video calls and actually doing it very effectively as well. So in March, just ahead of the first lockdown, the Queen moved out of London, out of Buckingham Palace, and she decamped to Windsor. Soon after, Philip, the Duke of Edinburgh, joined her. Of course, he was still at Sandringham. He was residing at Wood Farm, almost like his retirement kind of home. So he joined her at Windsor Castle, and it was the first time they have had a prolonged period of time together in such kind of close confines, not being able to do the usual work they would normally do. And of course, Prince Philip doesn't really feature in the Royal Year in Review that much, because obviously he is no longer a working royal. He did retire and has earned every single moment of his retirement after a lifetime of dedication and service. Nobody begrudges him his retirement at all. So in April, the Queen made a very rare address to the nation. It's only happened a handful of times before, and it was felt, well, at times of national crisis, at times of national need. Yes, the British public look to our leaders, we look to the elected government of the day, but in terms of a nation looking to a figurehead, we do look to the monarch. There was lots of rumbles. Will the Queen address the nation? What will she say? It was confirmed she did address the nation. We got a very rousing address from the Queen, that famous message where she did say, "We will meet again." She drew on the wartime spirit and said that this generation of Britons evoke the same spirit of generations that have gone before. We will meet again. Those words touched the heart of a nation. And also, the royals took part in the clap for carers. We saw the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge and the Cambridge children. We saw lots of royals taking part in the national effort. And of course, the royals did play a very important part in the kind of keeping up the spirit of the British people. As I've got marked down here, duties went digital. They did indeed, and it was... I remember the first time I saw the Queen doing a Zoom call. I was like, oh, wow, this is absolutely amazing. And the Queen has embraced technology. The Queen has never been afraid to embrace technology. Never necessarily ahead of technology, but certainly the palace has kept up. The Queen first tweeted, well, she kind of launched a tweet. Buckingham Palace and the royal family have been on social media accounts for, you know, almost a decade or more now, I think. So the Queen's always been ahead, you know, television addresses, radio addresses, you know, bringing the coronation to TV, always keeping up with technology. In fact, the Queen could be known as, you know, the Queen of the digital era. She really is. And true to form, she didn't shy away from new methods of communication, new methods of doing engagements, which I thought was really good. And it was really nice to see kind of a different side of the Queen. By the way, as well, the royals, this year we got to see so many different royal backdrops. We got to see a glimpse into, you know, we saw Prince Charles's bookshelf, we saw Camilla's office, we saw Edward and Sophie's, we saw a little bit of a sneak peek of inside Kensington Palace with William and Catherine doing their different addresses. We saw Catherine's curtains. I loved seeing Catherine's curtains, and of course we saw a few backdrops with the Queen at Windsor Castle, which I thought was really nice to kind of see. People were analysing the shelves of what was on them, what books were they reading, all that kind of thing. So I really kind of enjoyed seeing that. So for the Queen, back in July was the first time that she returned to a very stripped back in-person engagement, and that was of course tonight to give a knighthood to Sir Captain Thomas More, who raised an incredible amount of money for National Health Service charities. He got knighted. The Queen of course was still socially distanced. The engagement took place at Windsor Castle, and she, of course she had the sword and she knighted Sir Captain Tom More. So I thought that was a really lovely first engagement. Also, of course, notably, all of the royal big pageantry events, the Queen's birthday parade, Trooping the Colour, for example, were all cancelled this year, obviously in line with government advice and guidelines, which was very, very sad. But we did see a stripped back Trooping the Colour, which actually I equally enjoyed. It took place at Windsor Castle. We still had some of the ceremonial music, and I really enjoyed it. It was still televised. Everything was socially distanced. The Queen, of course, was watching. I kind of enjoyed it, but it wasn't the same as the big Trooping the Colour with the balcony appearances. And there's still a bit of a shadow over whether that will happen this year in 2021. We still don't know. Things are still kind of on hold. Huge vaccination programmes are being rolled out here in the UK. Fingers crossed that we're going to get something back. But again, for the Queen and the royals, you know, things like the Chelsea Flower Show, Remembrance Sunday wasn't quite the same as it normally is. Things haven't been the same, but things have still carried on. The work of the royal family has still very, very much carried on. Back in July, we also had photos to mark Prince Philip's 99th birthday, which of course were lovely, of the Queen and Philip. In July, we had Princess Beatrice's wedding, where of course we saw the Queen and the Duke of Edinburgh. They were kind of the only real kind of official wedding photos that were released. We got a few photos of the happy couple together, Beatrice and Edoardo Mapelli Mozzi. And of course, I should mention Princess Beatrice's wedding dress. Of course, it was a Norman Hartnell design, lent to her by the Queen. It's one of the Queen's dresses. She wore a beautiful tiara, on loan, of course, from the Queen. And she just looked really stunning. It was a very stripped back wedding, of course, in line with with all the government guidelines, and social distancing was fully in place. And it was a really, really beautiful, kind of a really private, stripped back occasion for the royals. And in particular, it was great to see the Queen. The Queen and Philip both looking incredibly healthy during this year. For VE Day, the Queen, of course, gave a very poignant message. All of the really big occasions, although not taken place in quite the same way, they all still got marked. Everything kind of still went ahead, but not in quite the same way. Of course, technology embraced for this. In November, it was Philip and the Queen's 73rd wedding anniversary, where, of course, we got that really cute photograph of them opening their their wedding anniversary cards, and especially a card from the Cambridge children, I should say. So that's kind of the, well, no, I will go as well. The Queen made a really, really, a typically really, really good Christmas speech. And a lot of people were kind of thinking, what was she going to talk about this year? You know, basically, where was she going to start? I mean, there's so much going on. But no, the Queen's Christmas message struck the right chord, as it always does. And of course, the Queen spent a low-key Christmas, didn't go to Sandringham as normal. She has been staying at Windsor with Philip. And that's where we kind of leave, I think, the Queen's year in review. We're going to move on in a moment to Charles. But I want to go to the live people in the live comments and read kind of what people are saying about what I've spoken about already. Sue has still got her tree up and doesn't feel as bad knowing that the Queen keeps hers up until February. Becky, I think, leaves hers up until her husband takes them down, I think she's saying. Until your husband's birthday is over at his request. Lots of people wishing Happy New Year. Becky says, I loved the Christmas speech. Mine or the Queen's. If you didn't know, I did actually make my own Christmas speech, so do go through the videos and watch that. It's Elise Cooper's birthday. Hello and happy birthday to you. Becky says, I hope so, and that it will increase her life. Well, she was the Queen looking very happy, and yes, she was seen out riding quite a lot while she was at Windsor. Christine says, I heard there will be a new coin to commemorate the Queen's 95th birthday. I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, in the UK, stamps, commemorative coins are all part and parcel. We do have so many of them, so it wouldn't surprise me in the slightest if there was something. There may even be something upcoming for Philip's 100th birthday, although it is rumoured that he wants a very low-key affair. But this is the 2020 year in review, so we'll kind of try and stick to that. Mason says, hope the Queen had a wonderful anniversary with Prince Philip. Wrote a letter to them, sending them my best wishes for their anniversary. And it does take usually quite a few months to get a response back, but you should kind of get something back. IBRK says, how many residences do the Cambridges have? 2. They have Anmer Hall, which is not a Crown Estate property. That was personally gifted from the Queen. It's actually part of the private Sandringham estate, which is still not Crown Estate property. So that was given as a wedding present, and their Kensington Palace apartment is part of the kind of wider Crown Estate property. That's the official residence of which they have for performing royal duties, for giving a lifetime of dedication and service. So they have 2 homes. Becky says, I loved your speech and the Queen's. Right. I'm going to move on to Charles. So the run-up to lockdown for Charles was a very busy period. Charles and Anne are usually some of the first royals to return to royal duties following the Christmas break. Unlike the Queen, who obviously returns to royal duties in February, Charles and Anne and some of the other royals are back to it pretty much straight away. Normally after kind of the Hogmanay New Year period has finished. Of course, Charles and Camilla didn't go to Scotland, to Balmoral, to Birk Hall, as they normally do. They stayed, I think they actually stayed, I think, in Gloucestershire, so which is of course quite close to Camilla's private home of Ray Mill as well. So the run-up to lockdown was a busy period for Charles. He went to Newquay on the 6th of March, and on that occasion he was still shaking hands. Soon after, this is kind of on the cusp of when coronavirus was being taken seriously. There was a time in the early part of the year, kind of just before March, where I think a lot of people in the UK, including the government, were kind of very, very much downplaying the coronavirus. And like I say, on the 6th of March, as late as the 6th of March, Charles, following government advice at the time, was still shaking hands when he was doing in-person engagements. Soon after, advice changed, and of course, he was not. On the 25th of March, Charles tested positive for the coronavirus. And of course, he stayed at Birk Hall and isolated, away separately from Camilla. And of course, Birk Hall is on the Balmoral estate, so they were not at Highgrove at the time. Camilla, as far as we are aware, did not contract coronavirus from Charles, so they had to kind of isolate for a few weeks from each other. In June, social distancing measures were properly put in place, and in-person engagements could resume. And of course, the Prince carried on with in-person engagements up until the second lockdown, and then of course the third lockdown. In between lockdowns, he has followed government advice and carried on with as many in-person engagements as he possibly could. Of course, he took to Zoom calls and lots of different video messages to carry on his royal duties as well, and has still remained a very active working member of the royal family. It will be interesting to compare the kind of working totals compared to previous years. Now, the year in review cannot take place without talking about Harry and Meghan, because of course they were still classed as full-time working royals up until the last day of March, and that turnover period into April. So in January, before the coronavirus pandemic, Harry and Meghan returned back to the UK, and they visited Canada House. That was their first official visit of the year, and of course that was to thank Canada for being very hospitable during their stay that previous kind of winter. On the 8th of January, they announced on social media that they would be stepping back from royal duties. They obviously had they did that online, without, it's understood, having discussed that they were going to do so with the royal family. I think discussions had been taking place about their role in the previous months, but nothing had been decided at that point. So they kind of announced it to the world. They had a list of intentions, which they published on their website at the time, which was sussexroyal.com, basically saying their intentions. They wanted to split their time between the UK and the USA, but they also wanted to support the Queen with royal duties, and crucially they wanted to earn their own money, and they didn't want to take any money from the public purse in the form of the sovereign grant. And of course this led to I'm summarising basically. There's a lot more to this, of course, but I'm summarising. So on the 13th of January, there was what became known as the Sandringham Summit. And I remember doing lots of videos on that at the time. The Queen definitely said that she wanted this issue sorted and resolved within days rather than weeks. So the main family members, as well as royal advisors, kind of, forged whatever deal that they agreed, whatever arrangements were put in place at the hashtag Sandringham Summit. The Queen accepted the desire for Harry and Meghan to have more independence, and that included no public funding, that they were to keep their titles but agree not to use HRH in a working capacity. They would continue to uphold the values of the Queen, and of course, we do not know exactly what those values were. So when it, and that would lead to a 12-month review period. And of course, I imagine when it comes to that period, which we're coming up to, kind of March, the beginning of April, it will probably be the continue to uphold the values of the Queen that will be looked at most intently, I would imagine. So yes, we do have a 12-month review period coming up. Just after, Harry attended a Centre Barlow kind of meeting where Harry made a speech where he said, "Just call me Harry." Then, at the end of March, there was a series of last royal engagements, which of course concluded with the Commonwealth Day ceremony. And of course, there was much talk and conversation about Harry and Meghan at the Commonwealth Day ceremony, how they interacted or how the other royal family members interacted with them. And also there was a bit of a hoo-ha over Harry and Meghan being left off the official programme in terms of the entrance, going in that kind of pecking order of going in and out of the Commonwealth Day service. And of course, William and Kate agreed to arrive pretty much at the same time as Harry and Meghan to kind of save any whatever was going on there. Who knows? Right, I'm going to kind of go back and read a little bit more of people's comments. Tisha says, "Happy the Queen stays active. It's so important." It is indeed. Oh, Mason did get a response. It's sitting next to me. I just waited a month. Well, that's quite quick. So you did really, really well. Lauren says, "It would be lovely to see Prince Philip." As always, it is. Mason says, "I always love to hear about Charles and Camilla." Lauren says, "Anyone else looking forward to Camilla's book club?" We'll talk about that in, I think, a different video. But yes, she has launched a book club. Right, I am going to carry on now. So, the next royals we're going to talk about for this year in review is, of course, the Cambridges, who have undoubtedly stepped up. And they've had to step up for a variety of reasons. One, because of course there is no more Prince Andrew in terms of active royal duty. There's a big cloud over, whether he will return, how he might return, will he ever return? Who knows? But at the moment, Prince Andrew is not undertaking any royal duties. There's also been, whilst we're on the subject of Prince Andrew, there is obviously ongoing legal matters surrounding his former friendship with Jeffrey Epstein. We don't know which way that is going to go. I was hoping for 2020 that this was going to be resolved one way or the other. I think it doesn't do anybody any favours, this kind of hanging in the balance. It needs a resolution, one way or the other. At the moment, we have Prince Andrew voluntarily, he asked the Queen if he could step back from royal duties. She agreed. He is still undergoing public funding for security. However, his offices at Buckingham Palace were dissolved around the time that he stepped back. So he's not receiving any money from the sovereign grant in terms of maintaining an office, maintaining staff. He's largely resided at Windsor, at his home of Royal Large with Sarah, Duchess of York, his ex-wife, and especially during lockdown and isolation. As I said, things are ongoing legally with his situation. There has been talk at the end of 2020 about whether or not the public should be funding even his basic security, seeing as he is no longer classed as a working royal. And of course, I expect those conversations to carry on into 2021. And I can only hope, as I hoped for 2020, that the matters and the issues regarding Prince Andrew's legal situation will be resolved one way or the other. I think it still needs a resolution. So here's hoping that something will happen and we won't kind of have this kind of logjam that we're in at the moment. So hopefully something will clear up with what's happening with Prince Andrew. Right, let's get back to the Cambridges. So they have split their time during lockdown and last year between Norfolk and Kensington Palace. Of course, Norfolk, their Anmer Hall country residence, not Crown Estate, and Kensington Palace apartment, their kind of Crown Estate property. The Cambridges have stepped up, and as I said before, for a variety of reasons. One, no Prince Andrew in terms of being a working royal, and of course Harry and Meghan have stepped back as well. So there hasn't been the amount of working royals that there has been previously. We still have, of course, the Queen's cousins, who are still very much active and doing royal duty. But there has been a little bit of a void. We have seen not just the Cambridges stepping up, but also Edward and Sophie, which I'll talk about in a moment as well. So the Cambridges have stepped up. It was natural for them to step up anyway. Eventually they're going to be, we think, the Prince and Princess of Wales, if that is confirmed upon William. And he'll certainly be the Duke of Cornwall, even if he's not given the Prince of Wales title. So they have stepped up. It was always going to be a natural progression anyway. In April, William tested positive for the coronavirus, but we didn't know at the time. There were no kind of press releases going on at the time. Again, William and Catherine returned to many engagements online, and their primary focus, was to concentrate on the key workers who kept on carrying on during the coronavirus pandemic. We saw them doing online bingo. We saw them doing chats to care homes. We saw them at Barry Island. Of course, this is when lockdowns were lifted. They went to like an amusement park at Barry Island. All kind of very worthwhile engagements basically intended to get the economy back and moving, but also to show respect and to show thanks for key workers. This year as well culminated for the Duchess of Cambridge in I think a number of years worth of work, but it also sets the scene for future work to come in many, many years. I'm talking, of course, about the early years 5 big questions survey, of course, to kind of find out how the early years of a child's development and life can affect them into adulthood and the chances that they have going into adulthood for success. This is just the beginning. It's not just 5 big questions. This is going to form the basis, I think, of her key work for probably decades into the future. So that was something really positive for last year. Also, she got involved in the Hold Still exhibition in conjunction with the National Portrait Gallery to basically document through 100 photographs life during the coronavirus pandemic, and in particular the first national lockdown here in the UK. So we saw some amazing images that were finally picked for that 100. I did make a video on that, so you can go and check that out. There were images that made you laugh. There were images that made you cry. There were images that made you think. It was all there. It was almost like a visual time capsule of life during the first lockdown. So very, very worthwhile projects. William also took part in That Peter Crouch podcast. So Peter Crouch is a British footballer. He has a podcast. William was kind of like a guest speaker on it, and of course, a lot of the any funds that were raised during that, of course, I think went back into mental health charities. Also, he launched the Earthshot Prize in conjunction with David Attenborough, and of course, the Earthshot Prize is an ongoing prize, and it basically gives money to people that come up with ideas which could basically save the planet from, the effects of climate change. So we will see a lot more from the Earthshot Prize in the future. The Cambridge children were also featured a lot more this year than what they have in previous years. Of course, they are growing up. they do need a bit of an introduction into royal life and into what is going to be their future. I think the Cambridges have done this in a very good way for the Cambridge children, because it hasn't been too in your face. It's been quite natural, and I think it's been within what the children are happy with as well. So we got to see, for example, a video message between David Attenborough and George, Charlotte and Louis, which is really, really cute. And also they took part, well, they all visited as a family the pantomime at the London Palladium, and that was to support the theatre industry. And of course, a great treat for George, Charlotte and Louis to go and see a pantomime. Panto is a great British tradition this time of year, and sadly, many of the pantomimes were cancelled, but this one went ahead, and it was really, really great for them as a family to show support in a meaningful way for the theatre industry. Right, I'm going to move on. The Duchess of Cornwall. So Camilla has also had a very busy year. We started obviously with medical detection dogs, and she's basically been her work with the medical detection dogs. They've kind of been retraining the dogs to see if they can identify COVID through smell, through scent. So again, kind of really interesting, worthwhile work, and I'm hoping that maybe they can. Who knows? Also, Camilla took part in the Emma Barnett show, of course, the host of Women's Hour, and Camilla guest edited one episode which focused on domestic violence and abuse, which of course has been even more poignant and important during the coronavirus pandemic, with many people, with many vulnerable people, whether you be male or female, potentially locked down in the same house with an abusive partner. Camilla picked up on this straight away, basically at the start of the first lockdown, and was kind of championing domestic abuse charities. I think in the beginning of the first lockdown, people that potentially could suffer domestic abuse were forgotten. So Camilla focused her guest edit of the Emma Barnett show very, very much on the effects of domestic abuse, which was very, very important and ongoing important in terms of we're now in the third national lockdown. So abuse is still going on. In May, Charles and Camilla led the Remembrance service, and they attended the Balmoral War Memorial. And in August, they presided over the VJ Day National Memorial Arboretum service. In November, it was Remembrance Sunday, which of course they attended as well. So they took part in lots of national commemorative remembrance services, which was so important to have a royal on show for those national events. Of course, Camilla took part in many video messages. She has also launched her own book club, which obviously rolls more into 2021 than 2020. So I will talk about that in an upcoming video. But Camilla has been incredibly busy. The Queen was, of course, on the balcony alongside Camilla at the cenotaph for the Remembrance Sunday service, and Charles and Camilla were laid wreaths as well. So I was trying to read my writing. I do need my glasses. So again, a very, very busy and quite poignant year for Charles and Camilla. We did see, of course, I think it's important to note their Christmas card, because it was taken during the first lockdown, or what was it, the second? I'm losing track. But it was their Christmas card was taken at Balmoral whilst they were in some kind of lockdown. And of course, Camilla was wearing jeans. They looked very, very happy. And I think kind of for Charles and Camilla, again, a bit like the Queen and Philip, it's been a really good time to spend some time together. So one of the upsides, if there can be any taken, is that for a lot of couples, maybe they have had chance to kind of stop, wind down, spend a little bit more quality time together. Of course, it would be good if it wasn't in these circumstances, but nevertheless, you have to take some positives where they lie. Right. I should also talk about, so I talked about Harry and Meghan up to the point where they left the working royal family. Of course, they do still have the HRHs, they are still royal, and I should mention some of the things that have happened throughout their year this year. So for Harry and Meghan, I think it's been a year of personal triumph and also personal sadness. Of course, they have launched many, many projects which have been kind of affected by the coronavirus in terms of how soon they were brought out. But they've also had a period of great sadness when Meghan and Harry announced that they had suffered a miscarriage earlier in the year. So throughout the pandemic, they contributed and worked in their local community in LA. They signed a multi-year Netflix deal, a multi-year Spotify deal, and of course they launched the website and the official non-profit Archewell website, which you can all go and take a look at now if you didn't know what happened. Of course, Meghan and Harry were both outspoken when it came to the Black Lives Matter movement and equality and social justice, which they have made clear are going to be themes of their ongoing work going on into the future. So those are going to be themes we're going to be seeing Harry and Meghan talking about a lot. Also, there was lots of conversation about them championing people to get out and vote in the American election, which of course has already taken place. They were supposed to be returning in January to attend some ongoing legal issues, which of course have been postponed for 9 months. And of course, there's lots of talk and speculation. Why 9 months? And of course, I'm not going to get into all of those details, but basically, there is lots of conversation around that. And that kind of brings me to Edward and Sophie, who again have been very, very prominent this year. Sophie in particular has been picked up on as a royal that's being thrust a little bit more kind of to the forefront. Edward and Sophie both have been carrying on doing lots of work on the grounds for charities during the coronavirus pandemic, especially with food, kind of packing food parcels, supply bags, that kind of thing. Going forward in 2021, as I've said before, I'm not sure we're going to have all the usual things to look forward to like we normally would, like Trooping the Colour, the Chelsea Flower Show, Royal Ascot. All these different things are very, very much in the balance. It depends how fast the UK can roll out the vaccinations. It's going at a reasonable pace at the moment, but it really needs to pick up if we are to have any, for example, summer garden parties. I think provisionally they have actually been cancelled right now. So again, kind of next year is looking to be a little bit bleak in terms of those set piece royal events that we all look forward to. Going forward again, we can expect to see, when things are back to normal, a lot more royal foreign tours from the Cambridges, from Edward and Sophie, and of course we will see next year Philip's 100th birthday. It is rumoured that he does not want to have a big fuss, which is typically Philip. But hey, if a big fuss might help to also cheer up the nation, Philip, you might just have to do it, literally. Right, I have come to the end of my year in review. So I am going to scoot down and start to read some of the comments. Lauren says, maybe on my blog I could write down some things like upcoming birthdays and royal events. I need to sit down and compile them first, basically. Christine says, it was good to see the family together at Windsor at Christmas time. Yes. Oh, I've got one final note to talk about. You reminded me. So yeah, we saw the final Christmas image. This is when, obviously, the Cambridges had come back from their UK train tour, and they all met at Windsor Castle. They were greeted by the Queen, and there was a photograph taken which basically showed the key members of the royal family going forward, certainly indefinitely, shall we say. So of course we had the Queen in the centre, we had William and Catherine, and we had Sophie and Edward, and then we had Charles and Camilla, and then we had Princess Anne. Oh, I haven't mentioned Princess Anne. Princess Anne, of course, you know Princess Anne. She was, I think, one of the first out of lockdown to return to an in-person engagement. I mean, she is a tireless workhorse. I can only begin to imagine how frustrating it was for Princess Anne to be locked down and not to have, for example, the Gatcombe horse trials go ahead, which is normally held on her private estate of Gatcombe Park. It would have probably been, it's probably been a really incredibly, like for all of us, but for Princess Anne, a very frustrating year because she likes to be out and about and busy. We did see Princess Anne, of course, embracing technology. My favourite moment of Princess Anne for the year is when she was reading a story and she had her glasses on and she looked like the camera angle was kind of like looking up at her, and she reminded me of like a really strict school teacher, and it really made me giggle. So I loved Princess Anne's work for this year. Right, I'm going to carry on with the comments. Lady Buckingham says, this is nice, very informative. There were a couple of these engagements I missed. It's nice to hear all of these. Yeah, it's nice to reflect on the year and also look forward to the future. Lauren says, do we think the Queen and Prince Philip will have had their jab yet? They certainly qualify in the UK for the different categories that we have to have had the coronavirus vaccine. However, there is no official announcement yet as to if they have or haven't. So I cannot possibly contribute to any speculation. So I'm going to leave it at, I will inform you all as soon as I know that they've had it. I will let you know. But they certainly fall into that category where they would be eligible to have it anyway. Christine says, is there any reason why William will not be Prince of Wales? No. It's just not automatic. As soon as Charles becomes king, what is automatic is that William becomes the Duke of Cornwall and he takes over the Duchy of Cornwall, basically. But it is not automatic that you suddenly become the Prince of Wales if you are the male heir to the throne, which of course William would be when Charles is king. It has to be confirmed upon him. Just as it was with Charles. Not every male heir to the throne has been the Prince of Wales. So there is no reason why he wouldn't be, but it's not automatic. So we have to kind of go with saying, we think that he's going to be the Prince of Wales. It's more than likely that he will be, but it's not guaranteed, if that makes sense. It's not automatic. It has to be conferred upon him by Charles. Elaine says, all the shenanigans, I love that word, I love a good shenanigan, has made me really appreciate the Queen, Charles and Camilla, and of course the Cambridges, yeah, who of course are pledging a lifetime of dedication and service. Lauren says, let's hope we see more of the more minor royals this year. Yeah, I mean, there are, of course, still the Queen's cousins, which are still working royals. But I think the primary focus is on the royals that I've just mentioned. The ones that were in that Christmas photograph when William and Catherine returned from the royal train tour, those are going to be the focus and the key of the British royal family. Becky says, I enjoy seeing Edward and Sophie out with their children in London activities. Me too. I really, really do. Carol says, I'm an American. However, last night, something I never thought I would see. Oh, yeah, with the, with what's been going on in Washington, yeah. And I am not commenting on that in this video, but yes, it was shocking. Let's put it that way. Lauren says, what are you looking forward to for the Royals this year? I was looking forward to lots more of these kind of big set-piece royal events, but I think we can kind of almost get those out of our head. If they come, they come. If they don't, they don't. I think what I'm looking forward to the most is probably whatever happens for Prince Philip's birthday, for his 100th birthday. I'm really hoping that Philip capitulates and allows some kind of national celebration. I'm hoping that we, at the very least, get some kind of official portrait or something. So I'm kind of looking forward to that. I'm also looking forward to hearing that the Queen has had the vaccine. I think that's going to be something that I'm personally looking forward to. Also, if they do a Troop in the Colour that's stripped back at Windsor, I'm looking forward to that. But yeah, other than that, I don't think we're going to see any overseas tours or anything of that nature. So yeah, it's going to be another kind of tough year, I suppose. And Christine says, I would love seeing another investiture ceremony. I remember Prince Charles as well. I've stood on the Welsh slate dais where Charles was invested as the Prince of Wales at Carnarvon Castle. And I would love to see another piece of pageantry. I don't know if we ever will see that again, but I would love to see it. Mega says, looking forward to for the royal visits to India. I mean, we don't know any royal visits are going to go ahead. I would love it if they did. Of course I would love, but we do not know if any royal tours are going to be going ahead. Marion says, I read on one site where Her Majesty and the Duke of Edinburgh will wait their turn until those in long-term care and those working in the hospitals. Yeah, it's basically, they are in that category now. In the UK, there are 4 categories: care homes, people in care homes, National Health Service staff, care staff, and the over 70s. So the Queen and the Duke of Edinburgh do fall into those categories, and it is the UK's intention for all of those 4 categories to be vaccinated by, was it mid-February? I think their target is mid-February, early March. So they are kind of in that category to get it done, basically. Right, I'm going to end this year's Royal Year in Review 2020 here. If you have enjoyed this video and found it useful, please give it a big old thumbs up. Leave a comment as well. Don't forget to subscribe in case I do another, well, I always do a live pop-up video. And all that's left for me to say is thank you for watching, and I will see you next time. Mwah to you all, and goodbye.